Hey, good morning. It's Dr. James. I hope you're off to a beautiful start today. It's really wonderful to see you. Thank you for your time and thank you for your energy. And I really seldom ever ask you to stay with a message, even if it's not totally connecting with you. But I am this morning going to ask you to, because I have a feeling at the very end of this message you will connect to it. And this is about Mr. Rogers. And Mr. Rogers has just come out with his new movie. And I love Mr. Rogers. We've now been missing him for nearly 20 years. But he literally finds a way into something, a memory of mine, literally every day. My mom and I were talking this morning. She called me and she said, "Isn't it great that Mr. Rogers' movie came out? What a perfect time to have his message come back out, nearly 20 years after he passed, and how much we need his message today." When I was a little boy, Mr. Rogers was a babysitter for me. He was a leader for me. He was a place of hope. He was a place of salvation for me. And my mom said he was a lot of those things for her too. We grew up in a crazy house. My mom and dad had a lot of challenges. I think there was a lot of passion there. But the struggles with alcoholism, the struggles with my dad's fidelity, the struggles with just a young couple trying to navigate and failing. And my mom used to talk about this with me when I was growing up. Remember Mr. Rogers? And you'd come home from school, and that morning may not have been so good because your dad didn't come home that night. But you'd go and you'd plant yourself right in front of that television, you'd turn it on, and he would welcome you into his neighborhood. And she said, "I would see your body language change. I would see you feel like you softened. You used to leave for school with your guard up, like any kid who grew up in a house that wasn't necessarily working and the family was crumbling. You'd kind of put your guard up, trying to brace yourself for the unpredictability and the craziness, the things that you couldn't control. You're 5, 6, 7 years old, and you think you can control things. I used to think I could outlove these things. If I loved my dad more, maybe he would stay. If I would just be a great, perfect kid, like do everything right, maybe my family would stay together, my parents wouldn't get divorced." And I know now from an epigenetic standpoint that changes your genes. It puts you on a track right into your adulthood where you create systemic inflammation because you've trained your brain and you've trained your genes and you've trained your body, your emotions and your heart and your spirit to be on hyper alert, waiting for the next bad thing to happen. And research shows us today that we could really use a lot more Mr. Rogers. So Mr. Rogers isn't here anymore. Or is he? Did you watch me, a little down feather, did you watch Mr. Rogers when you were a little kid? And do you know some of the most beautiful lessons he used to say came down to one simple phrase that I'll never forget on a particularly bad day? He said, "When you're full of fear, when you're feeling scared, look for the helpers. Look for the helpers. They'll remind you of God. They'll remind you of the power. They'll remind you of something that's bigger than all of us, that will take care of all of us." So today, I'm asking you to be one of the people that he talked about. You're going to be a helper today. I'm going to be a helper today. We're going to be the helpers today. And no matter what's going on out there, we will be seen as being the ones that Mr. Rogers talked about, who made us all feel like the neighborhood was still an okay place to be. And we were safe here in the neighborhood. So, thank you, Mr. Rogers. Thank you, Tom Hanks, for coming out and doing this story so beautifully. And thank you, Mom, Carol, my mom, turning 80 here in a few weeks, for letting me watch Mr. Rogers with her and not even knowing how much she was getting his message to as a young mom, trying to keep it all together. You were a great helper, Mom, and you still are. And I love you. I love you too. Much love. Every blessing.